Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the sixth movie in this franchise, Mission Impossible Fallout. I don't know why anybody wants me to review this particular franchise of movies. And I was thinking about why that is when I was running through my head in the middle of the movie when the plot got entirely too convoluted. And I started thinking about other franchises where you might have similar spy architecture and convoluted plotting and insane stunts, and why those movies may have worked better than this franchise does. So I went to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, really where if anything going to be drawn back to this, it comes with the characters being grounded in the comics and the mythos. And there is some attempt at thematic depth that frequently occurs over the series of 20 plus movies that they put out thus far. So, okay, let's move on to something that's a little bit more paranoid and dark and edgy, like the Jason Bourne movies. And while I don't really appreciate Ludlum's brand of paranoia, I do get their appeal, even if the camera work is god-awful, but that's my issue with shaky cam. So, okay, let's go for something a little bit lighter, like the Fast and the Furious movies, which have embraced more of that CIA secret agent kind of vibe. Alright, they're more of a giant bro party that hangs out with big muscle cars. I guess I can appreciate that. And you have a lot of the camaraderie, which is why people will come back to those movies. So, alright, let's go to the other big secret agent franchise, and that's the Bond movies. But if I go to the Bond movies that I really love, there is a weight to the character of James Bond, but there are various incarnations of the character that's lent it the weight and history to have lasted so long, from the highs and the lows. Whereas with the Mission Impossible franchise, I'm not seeing it. I'm coming as a film critic who actually prefers thematic depth and character growth. And if you're 6 movies into a franchise and you rapidly realize that the most reason why these films exist is that Tom Cruise can continue to show off how good shape he's in and the insane stunts that he can still pull off himself, well, if that's what you want to see in the movie, fine, but it doesn't really give me a lot to say beyond that, especially surrounding any sort of plot or thematic depth. Thematic depth, we're not even touching that in this particular film, because you know what you're getting, and the audience isn't looking for that either in terms of a movie that will actually resonate further beyond that. You typically have some MacGuffin that's run loose and has been taken hold by terrorist or some other stock super mastermind character. And in this case, it's plutonium because they want to build nuclear weapons, but there's 3 plutonium cylinders, and then there's a massively convoluted plot in order to disarm them. And yeah, the interplay with Simon Pegg and Ving Rhames is fine, but really, everyone there is to see our main character, Tom Cruise, play Ethan Hunt, who could be going rogue, who is on that Mission Impossible task force, and of course will never ever die because this franchise doesn't know how to take any serious chances. I keep circling back to a movie like Casino Royale, where there were scenes with James Bond where he was legit ass getting tortured, but there was a character that could suffer consequences. Whereas we're 6 movies in to this particular incarnation with Tom Cruise, we're now trying to get some level of investment in the narrative that he left some woman behind that he truly cared about, and the villain now knows and is going to go after that particular person to utterly destroy him, and I'm not buying it. I'm not seeing the investment. I'm sorry, folks. I really want to actually get into the character or the arc that's coming out of these films, as this is the one that actually tries to build off of some direct continuity from earlier in the series, as if there's a reason why that happens, if only to make the plots even feel even more muddled and confusing. But at the same time, it's not something that I'm drawn back to in the same way, because let's be honest, Ethan Hunt, for as much as he thinks on his feet and plays the Tom Cruise archetype, if you're not enamored with the Tom Cruise archetype or expecting the Tom Cruise archetype is going to change or evolve throughout the course of the movie, which he kind of really doesn't, then how am I supposed to get invested in the narrative? How am I supposed to get invested in any specific drama that this film might be trying to bring up? Now, they do try to introduce some form of conflict with the introduction of Henry Cavill as a hard-bitten CIA agent who's willing to go over the edge and kill and even conduct torture in some cases. And I'm sitting back here and I'm thinking, so what sort of contrast are you looking to draw with Tom Cruise? Which, if you know what Ethan Hunt has done throughout the rest of the franchise, it's not not really a lot of a contrast. You think they'd do something like an old versus young contrast, but that doesn't really happen either. He's just kind of a douche without a lot of screen presence or chemistry with Tom Cruise, and it doesn't really create a lot of conflict or clash or something that for us to be drawn into the arcs of the characters. And I guess from there you have to start talking about the mechanisms of the plot, which are beyond help. I don't even want to start punching plot holes in this mess, and really keeping track of who double crosses who always becomes kind of convoluted. And when the film starts taking the piss out of it being convoluted, look, you're not a parody. You're not Get Smart Mission Impossible. I'm not sure you can get away with that. But that's also because the movie kind of has a massive tone problem too. It wants to be a little bit more upbeat. It wants to have those jokes. It wants to have that good-natured, back-and-forth camaraderie. Keep people having a good time at the movies. Fine, I get that. Not everything has to be high drama. Not everything has to be comedy. This is an action-adventure movie. I get it. But then you have a villain who feels like he's out of a lesser tier Jason Bourne movie, and you have all the darker spycraft, all the competing interests that you expect would play in a much darker film than this is trying to be. And then you get whiplash shifts in tone where you have the jokes, you have the chase scene, you have some real heavier drama, but then you get the weird wisecracks from Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg, or when Alec Baldwin shows up as the spy master leader of Tom Cruise's IMF organization. It's a lot of clash there that doesn't always come together, especially when you have to keep in mind that there is some of those sillier gadgets and pieces that come out. I guess that's one thing that Henry Cavill doesn't like, the fact that Tom Cruise is using weird gadgets and stuff like that, and that he's more of a bruiser heavy. I guess, but there isn't a lot thematically that's built up around that, or there's any thematic payoff to that in the end, and especially when it comes down to the main motivations of our villain, which I gotta be honest, I'm not a fan of this particular guy. I found a lot of that villain acting really wooden, especially when we get the twist to get to him in the third act. But again, none of this matters. I stress this emphatically. None of my complaints about theme or lack of character development or any of my issues surrounding drama or tone, none of that matters. Because the main focus and the main reason why these movies are being made and produced by Tom Cruise is to show off that Tom Cruise can still do some insane stunts. And yeah, the stunts are genuinely impressive. I really like how the Mission Impossible movies continue to use practical effects, and they really pull off some insane car chases and a couple stunts with a helicopter that come in near the final act of the movie that are genuinely crazy. And yeah, there's some good fight scenes too that actually are really well directed. I like how a lot of this movie is shot and put together. The pieces around it are good, but when you realize the pieces don't build too much at all in terms of character depth or weight or any central loci to draw the film together, well, it just leaves me feeling a little bit hollow that, frankly, I'm a little bit surprised more film critics don't call out. But the funny thing is that there's a lot of film critics who love this franchise, and I kind of get why. Because for them, if they want to get sick of the superhero action movie and they want to point to something that's in terms of reasonably well-made filmmaking and something that's very easy to cotton on to, say, it's a B movie. We just turn off our brain and laugh. It's just something that's very populist and very easy to get behind. It's the same thing as Pitchfork giving high scores to a trap album. But I gotta be consistent here, guys. This film just didn't do a lot for me. And the franchise doesn't really do a lot for me. I gotta be honest. I appreciate what this is trying to do, and if you're still enamored in the cult of personality that is Tom Cruise, you'll probably like it. But for someone like me who wants all the narrative twists to have some form of dramatic payoff or the motivations to ultimately link together, when you have a second act where the twists start to stack up to the point where even the movie's taking the piss out of the convolution, it doesn't really click. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. And really, when you start realizing how many of the motivations just fall apart like hot cheese in the sun, ultimately makes you think that the movie just feels more hollow. And with that hollowness and without that greater depth of character drama and change, all the action set pieces, they're admittedly impressive, but they pick up some of that same hollowness, and I'm just not really compelled by them in any way. Still, if you're looking for a good time in the movies just to turn your brain off, which I'm not a fan of, especially when you have action movies that have a brain and can be that much more resonant. But if you're not looking for that, it's fine enough. Like, it's a spectacle, I'll give it that. There's some decent character interplay, and I do appreciate that Tom Cruise at least has some greater sense of vulnerability, and he actually does take a pretty considerable beating, even if you know him and his main supporting cast aren't going to be put in that much danger or that much drama. He's going to walk away from this. And because, again, Tom Cruise is not going to stop making Mission Impossible movies, which kind of undercuts the tension a little bit, but that's a different whole thing entirely. But yeah, for me, it doesn't do a lot, but I get why people like it. It's fine enough. And again, I was never bored, if only because I was spent most of the time snickering at all how convoluted and stupid the plot got. So, light 6 out of 10. Check it out if you're curious. I know there's going to be a lot of people who are way more crazy behind this franchise, but if you're not enamored in Tom Cruise, or you're expecting Tom Cruise to do more than show off some insane stunts, or actually have these movies have a consistent sense of drama or a thematic strong arc, you're going to forget this movie. And I think I already will. Sorry. But beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And yeah, I know, I'm going to get some flack for this, but again, I wish I liked these movies and they just don't do a lot for me. But if you want to get involved in my scheduling process or help support this channel, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. Want to see my schedule to my Instagram, link down there below. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.